Hey friends, how are you doing? My name is Amish and I'm basically a student and I got a band-aid in IELTS overall in academic test. And basically in this video, I'll tell you how to write the introduction of a report. I've already made a video based on this topic, but that video was in Hindi, but this video will be in English. So let's begin. So basically the introduction of a report is basically the first paragraph, okay? So it's like the first part. So you should note that it is absolutely vital to write the introduction in your own words. You should basically paraphrase the topic question, okay? You shouldn't like just copy it straight away. So I'll tell you the key phrases for graphs. So basically, uh, when there's a topic statement or a topic question about graphs, you can use words like you can paraphrase it like by using words like by using phrases like the graph shows information about, or you could say the graph illustrates data about, okay? And I'll also tell you key phrases to use in place of like time periods, like for example 2005 to 2015. You could say, oh, so in this case we are doing it for 2005 to 2015, okay? So you could say that over a 10-year period between 2005 and 2015, or you could also say over a decade between 2005 and 2015, because uh, from 2005 to 2015 it's over a decade, and a decade is like 10 years, okay? So so yeah, I'll just give an example of a question. So the question is that the chart shows, so just imagine there's a chart, okay? So the question is that the chart shows information about visitors to India between 2005 and 2015. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparison relevant. So this is like a typical topic statement, okay? It's like a typical topic question that you could get in your IELTS exam, okay? So the first format could be that the graph shows information about how many people visited India over a 10-year period between 2005 and 2015. So you could say that the graph shows in the beginning I told you should start with like something like this. So the graph shows information about how many people. So instead of visitors, we could use how many people visited India, and you should also mention the time period, which is over a 10-year period between 2005 and 2015. Okay. And the second format would be that the graph illustrates data about the number of people who visited India over a 10-year period between 2005 and 2015. So basically, you could also begin by like using the second format. Using the second key phrase, so which is this one. You could say that the graph illustrates data. Illustrates basically means like shows. It's like a fancy word for showing. So illustrates data about the number of people who visited India over a 10-year period between 2005 and 2015. Okay, and so I'll give you a call for action. So you should basically practice these. You should write these in your notebook, and you should practice these, and you should review them, and you should compare them. You shouldn't just like read straight away, because reading won't help much. Doing will help tremendously. Okay, so let's move on. So I'll also complete these two rewrites of like an introduction. So just imagine that there's a chart and it shows the bike sales in Pakistan between 2002 and 2008. Okay. So the first format would be that the graph shows information about how many bikes were sold in Pakistan over a 6-year period between 2002 and 2008. So you could start it with saying the graph shows information about how many bikes were sold in Pakistan over a 6-year period between 2002 and 2008. Okay. Second format would be uh, the graph illustrates data about the number of bikes. Did you notice that when I say the graph shows information, which is the first format, I use how many or how much? But when I use the second format, which is illustrates data, I either say the amount of or the number of. Okay, so it's like that. So the second format will be the graph illustrates data about the number of bikes which were sold in Pakistan over a 6-year period between 2002 and 2008. So you should not forget to mention the time period. You should not forget to mention the country. So in this case it's Pakistan, so you shouldn't forget that, and you shouldn't forget the subject. So the subject is bike sales, okay, and you shouldn't forget the correct wording of the format, okay. So let's move on. Okay, basically I'll now tell you like when to use how much and when to use how many. So I wrote in the first bullet point, I wrote don't be a lakir ka fakir. So this basically is like a phrase in Malay language, which basically means that don't like be robotic. Don't just copy it straight away to any question. Don't use the same like wording in every question. Uh, you should assimilate with the type of topic question. Okay, so I'll tell you when to use how much and how many. So if the topic is about an uncountable noun, for example, heat, I mean, like you can't count heat, right? Uh, you should, if it's like an uncountable noun, and then you should use how much or the amount of. Okay, and now you may ask what's an uncountable noun. So it's basically a noun that has one form, that only has one form, and it has no plural forms, and uh, basically you, if it doesn't have a plural form, that means that you can't like count it basically. So you can't say monies, you can't say heats, it's either heat or it's money. Okay, so for example, heat is an uncountable noun. We use how many for countable nouns. So a countable noun is basically a noun that can be counted, and it basically has both singular and plural forms. And for example, pen, for example, like car, like it's a countable noun. Okay, you can't say how much cars, you can say how many cars. Okay, you, so let's move on. Now I'll give you an example of when to use how much. Okay, so this is basically a bar chart, and uh, the topic statement is, I mean, the topic question is, the chart below shows the expenditure of two countries on consumer goods in 2010. Okay, so these are basically uh, five different goods. So cars, computers, books, perfume, cameras, and it shows the expenditure. Okay, so you could use the first form. So it's an example of how to use how much. So basically, expenditure means like money is involved, right? So the main subject is about money. So you should use how much or the amount of. You can't use how many, or you can't use the number of. You can't say the number of money. You can't say how many money. You can say how much money, or you can say the amount of money. Okay. So using the first format, we would say that the bar graph shows information about how much money was spent on five consumer goods in France and the UK in 2010. Don't forget to mention the year. Don't forget to mention the countries. So we have France and the UK. It's basically, the key is written over here, but it's blurry. So this is UK and this is France. Okay. Uh, so don't forget to mention the year. Don't forget to mention the countries. You can state that it's a bar graph, and you should say it shows information about how much money was spent on five consumer goods. Okay. Second format, we could say the bar graph illustrates data about the amount of money spent on five consumer goods in France and the UK in 2010. So when we, I told you this before, that when we use the second format, which is like illustrates data. When we say illustrates data, we should say the amount of or the number of. But when we say shows information about XYZ, we should say how much, or we should say how many. Okay. So again, countable nouns, you should use how much or the amount of, and in uncountable nouns you should use how much or the amount of, but in countable nouns you should use how many or the number of. Okay. So we can write an introduction on this topic, and it's called Juice Production in Nepal between 1990 and 1996. So juice is an uncountable noun. You can't, like, it only has a singular form. Okay. So using the first format, you would say the graph shows information about how much juice was produced in Nepal over a 6 year period between 1990 and 1996. Okay. So again, juice is an uncountable noun, so you said how much. And since you're using the first format, which is shows information about, that means you should use how much. You should mention the time period, and you should mention the country's name. Okay, which is Nepal. uh, then we have the second format, and you can say the graph illustrates data about the amount of juice which was produced in Nepal over a 6 year period between 1990 and 1996. And these sentences are only for graphs. Okay, it's not for maps or flowcharts. I'll come back to those later on, but uh, these are for graphs. Okay. Okay, now you should write. I'm telling you that you need to practice this yourself. So whenever I bring up a question like a topic statement, you should just go straight to your copy or notebook and write the answer down, and then check the answers later on. Okay, because if you practice, then only you will achieve like perfection. Okay. So the topic question is employment rates in Bangladesh and India between 1985 and 1992. Okay. So pause the video and practice yourself first. But I would say that employment rate is a countable noun because it has a plural form. You can see it in question itself. It says rates. Rates means that it's a plural form, so uh, it's a countable noun. So that means you should use how many or the number of. So the first way, you could either say how much or how many. It's a countable noun, so you should say how many. So we would say the graph shows information about how many people were employed in Bangladesh and India over a 7-year period between 1985 and 1992. Mention the country's name, you mentioned the time period, you mentioned the subject, which is like how many people were employed. Okay. Second format, we would say the graph illustrates data about the number of people employed in Bangladesh and India over a 7-year period between 1985 and 1992. Okay. This is the second format. When you say illustrates data, you should say the number of. Okay. Uh, so that is it. So guys, thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share the video, and click on the bell icon. And I'll see you in the next video. If you do need any help in IELTS, I could help you for free. If you need like a speaking buddy for practicing for speaking tests, I could be your buddy for free, because I want to help more and more people. And I could also mark your essays or your reports for absolutely nothing, like for 100% free of cost. And uh, if you do want that aid, do comment, and I'll reply you back. Okay. So thanks a lot. Best of luck. See you.